These people queued all night to be given back money that was already theirs. Seoul, July 2024. By dawn, the tickets had gone past 1,500, and the line still hadn't moved. Two collapsed that afternoon and left by ambulance. And inside the building, somebody photographed a note that had been left for staff. It said unsettled over 1 trillion won, next to refunds and X. Now, you've clicked pay on a website like this one, and you've probably never wondered where that money sleeps before it reaches the seller. 4 days later, the man who owned the company told Parliament there was no money left. The most he could reach was 80 billion won, and that was in China. 15 years earlier, eBay had paid up to $1.2 billion for a company this man built from nothing. He's been charged. He denies all of it, and 3 times a judge has refused to arrest him. But this is really the story of a gap, and of a name he chose back in the year 2000. Before any of it, Young-bae worked on oil fields. 8 years of it for an oilfield services company called Schlumberger, running operations across the Middle East and India. We only know that because his own company later put it in writing for American regulators. He hated it. In his own words, years afterward, "Being in the desert and the sea is tough. I didn't love it too much, and I didn't want to continue." So in 1999, at 33, he quit and joined a Korean internet company called Interpark because an old university senior asked him to. They handed him a side project, build a marketplace where anyone can sell anything. And then he gave it a name, Goodsdaq. Goods plus Nasdaq. Now, to be fair, it worked. But look at what he'd just done. A pilot project in somebody else's company, named after a stock exchange on the other side of the world. Within 5 years, the side project was beating the company eBay owned. In 2003, it was renamed G-Market, and the idea got simpler. Stop running auctions. Let sellers post a price. The rival was Auction, the biggest in the country, and eBay owned it. Then look what happens. G-Market sells 65 billion won of goods in 2003 and 1.08 trillion won in 2005. 16 times bigger in 2 years. And the numbers are audited because he's about to show them to America. On the 29th of June 2006, G-Market listed on Nasdaq, the first Korean e-commerce company ever to do it. So picture the party afterwards at the Grand Hyatt in Seoul. He's wearing a suit one of his own staff would later describe as shiny, and he gives his remarks bashfully, like a man apologizing for the fuss. Around the room, the staff keep asking each other the same thing. Us? Nasdaq? Nobody in that room is a banker. 2 years ago, they were a side project with a joke for a name. But this part was real. By 2008, G-Market outsold Auction, $3.2 billion against 2.2. He beat eBay in eBay's own market, which is exactly why eBay had already spent a year working out how to buy him. They'd filed with Korean competition regulators in May 2008. The public knew nothing. Then Lehman Brothers collapsed, and the bankers advising G-Market's shareholders changed firms mid-deal. And here's the part that shouldn't happen in a crash. On the 8th of December, eBay raised its offer from $23.50 a share to $24. The deal landed in April, $24 a share, and up to approximately $1.2 billion in total. Qoo held just over 5%, so his own share came to about $61 million. His public statement was gracious and corporate. So picture the 16th of April, 2009. He signs an agreement his own company files with American regulators, which means you can read it. It says he will not compete, and I'm quoting the contract here, in any manner whatsoever within the Republic of Korea, Singapore, or Japan. 3 countries named in one sentence. He's weeks from handing over the company he built, and afterwards he stays on as its president on a salary. And eBay wanted that same promise from one other man, a lieutenant called Ryo Kwang-jin. The Korean business press has said for years that eBay banned him from Korea for a decade. But that version isn't in any public document. What's in the document is 2 years in 3 countries. So he went to one of the 3 countries he just promised to stay out of, and he took eBay with him. In 2010, they set up a joint venture called Qoo10, And here's the part that gets left out every time. He owned 51% of it, eBay owned 49%, and they each put in $10 million. So the exile you've just been told about wasn't an escape from eBay at all. It was a partnership with them. That June, the site went live in Singapore under the old name Gmarket, the brand he just sold, licensed back to him. 2 years later, it was renamed Qoo10, and the company's own press release made the joke for us. Qoo10, it said, is the cooler way to shop. By 2015, it was the #1 marketplace in Singapore, and it raised $82 million led by the country's newspaper group. Then came the divorce. In 2018, eBay bought the Japanese half of the business for $573 million and handed back the rest. So he finally owned his empire outright. And in those same years, Lazada and Shopee started taking Singapore away from him. Here's what he told a reporter in 2019. Rivals can focus on scaling up quickly, regardless of how much money they lose, he said, but I can't go about it that way. And then the ban on going home ran out. In September 2022, he bought Tmon, one of the best-known deal sites in Korea. He didn't pay cash, he paid in shares of his own companies. And the thing he was buying owed more than everything it owned, because its accounts showed a hole of 638 billion won. Then he did it again. He bought Interpark Commerce, the shopping arm of the company he'd first walked into in 1999. The price was around 150 billion won. He handed over 23. Then we make price, another swap, from a company whose capital had been wiped out since 2019. Then in February 2024, the only one he paid real money for, Wish, the American shopping app, $173 million in cash, 3 years after it listed at $14 billion. And then, a month later, a department store group's entire online mall. He paid 518 million won for it. That's about half a Seoul apartment. So he'd bought 4 platforms in 18 months, and every one of them was already sinking. Which raises the only question that matters: what was he actually buying? He wasn't buying the companies, he was buying what sat inside them. So say you sell something on the site on the 1st of June. The shopper pays that day. That money lands with the platform. It's legally theirs to hold, and it was never theirs to own. Your sales month closes at the end of June, and then the clock the law allows starts running. It runs 40 days. So you get paid in the middle of August for a shirt somebody bought in the spring, and in between, your money sits in a company's account. It isn't idle because every single day, more of it arrives. Now here's the thing, 70 days wasn't the law, it was a choice, because Naver paid its sellers in about 3 days, and Qoo10 paid the next morning. And to be fair, that's what the defense says. His finance chief told the court that Qoo10 and Gmarket don't hold that cash either. Qoo put it as a question, where, he asked, is the rule that says that money can't be used to run the business? But remember that quote from 2019? He couldn't burn money the way his rivals did, so he found another way to grow, and it didn't need his money at all. And prosecutors say it was aimed at one place, the same place he'd named a company after in the year 2000. The indictment alleges the group pushed costs onto the platforms to fatten his logistics arm, Q Express, so it could list on Nasdaq. And it alleges he'd known since October 2021 that the listing was failing. By the spring of 2024, money coming in had to cover money already gone. Then in July, a payment was missed. On the 8th, We Make Price missed its settlement date and called it a coupon system error. On the 22nd, Tmon told sellers payment was delayed indefinitely. On the 23rd, the big travel agencies pulled their products at the peak of the holidays. And that's how most people found out. A trip in 4 days, already paid for, canceled. Past midnight, We Make Price's chief executive came down to the lobby and apologized to the crowd on the floor. If the card refunds failed, he told them, he'd wire the money by hand. Then came the 26th, and the building we started in, the all-night queue. The tickets passed 1,500, and that note somebody photographed inside, the one with the X. At 7:10 that morning, the first refund was paid. The man who got it turned to the line behind him and said, "You'll get yours too." Then he refused to give his name. On the 29th, both companies filed for court protection. And on the 30th, he sat in front of Parliament, where a lawmaker held up handcuffs that victims had posted in. Victims sent handcuffs here, the lawmaker said. Handcuffs. Do you know how they feel? Qoo said there was no money left and that most of it had gone on marketing and discounts. Then in the corridor, he told reporters he'd never once imagined it could collapse like this. And he asked for 6 months. The figure he gave Parliament for consumer damage was 50 billion won. The government was still counting. The final tally came a month later, 1.3 trillion won owed to 48,000 businesses. 9 in 10 of them were owed less than 10 million won each, and 981 big sellers held most of the rest. And Tiemann had told regulators it was 45 billion won behind, when the real figure was 516 billion. That December, Qoo was charged with 9 other people. One of them was Tiemann's chief executive, Ryu Kwang-jin, the other man eBay made sign in 2009. Prosecutors allege 1.85 trillion won was taken from 330,000 victims. He denies all of it. 3 times prosecutors asked the court to arrest him. 3 times a judge said no. The first ruling found there was room to contest the allegations, so his right to defend himself had to be protected. So here's what's left. Tiemann was sold in court, and its creditors got back 7,500 won for every million they were owed. It's still shut. We Make Price went bankrupt, and Interpark Commerce, the company he first walked into in 1999, went bankrupt inside his own group. In Singapore, the liquidators logged $198 million of claims. They recovered $34,000. $500 of that was furniture. Qoo Express survived under new owners with a new name. Its Nasdaq plan was withdrawn. And Qoo still goes to an office in Gangnam, running a rescue company for businesses he no longer controls. He registered it with a share capital of 999,999,901. The trial is still running, and there is still no verdict. So the next time you buy something online, remember the gap. Somebody is holding your money tonight. And the last thing this man said in public about those 6 months was that he wanted one more chance to aim higher. That closes this case. But look at the shelf. Every file up there started with somebody certain they'd get away with it. The next one's already on the desk. If this was worth your time, subscribe. There's another case on your screen right now.